Hello there, very good evening and welcome to Let's Talk Politics. I'm your host, Layne, on this Wednesday evening, filling in for Michael Gordon. Tonight's program, we have a number of issues to address, to examine. Of course, we want to keep you updated. We want to continue to bring you information on the flooding taking place across the country, and of course, the manner in which the government has responded and continues to respond to the needs of citizens in these difficult times, so wherever they are in the country. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit about you know some of the other topical political issues that are in the public's domain. As we go through the program tonight, we're going to just go for about 30 minutes this evening, and I want to first start with the government's response to the flooding across the country. As you're aware, those of you who looked at the program last evening when I was joined by Bishop Juan Edgel, the Minister of Public Works, we were discussing, what has been happening, and he had confirmed last evening that Region 8 is now added to the list of regions, making it all 10 administrative regions facing some amount of flooding. The situation remains very, very critical in the Blackbush Polar area, where the water by now is stagnant, as well as in the Kokwani Region 10 area, where the water levels were rising rapidly. Um, the fact of the matter is, though, that teams from the government would have been out, ministers of the government have been out in the various regions across the country, wherever there is flooding, to respond to the needs of the people. Today, the Honorable Zulfikar Mustafa, the Minister of Agriculture, was in the Region 3 area, where he took action, immediately actions he took on the ground to ensure that the needs of people on the West Bank are addressed, particularly with flooding in some of those areas. Not minimal flooding per se, but still actions are being taken wherever they're happening. So I think he has asked that an excavator be deployed to the area to clear drainage canals that weren't cleared for years under the previous administration. That is contributing to the flooding to some extent. So the government continues to respond to the needs of people. Today, the Honorable Prime Minister visited the gymnasium on Mandela Avenue there, well, the Sheriff Street Mandela Avenue at the back there, where thousands of hampers, thousands of food hampers are being packed to be dispatched to citizens who are affected by the flooding. Those of you who follow the news, you will see that corporate Guyana is now coming on board, making contributions to ensure that those who are affected, and I keep emphasizing the point, that persons who are affected by the flooding, that reach out to the government, their information, reach out to the Civil Defense Commission, ensure that you let them know your situation so that assistance can be brought to you. The reality is, and I keep re-emphasizing this point because I want people to understand, despite the attempts by some to make this a political issue, the reality is that we continue to have um, very, very high intensity rainfall coupled with high tides. And based on what all the signs are showing, is that the contributing factor to the flooding, for example, in places like Region 9, for example, the rivers, many of the rivers in Brazil, well, closer to the Guyana side of the Guyana border, are overflowing, and large parts of Brazil are flooded. So even if we have drainage for the water in the first place, we wouldn't have much drainage because the Takatu River is what we depend on heavily to drain parts of the Region 9 area. And if that is overtopping, and if parts of Brazil closer to the border is flooded, then it compounds rather the situation there. And that is what is happening in Region 9. So there's difficulty draining the water in the first instance. And added to that is the fact that neighboring Brazil is experiencing serious flooding. The Rio Branco River and so forth, all those rivers I understand are overtopping. So there's a difficult situation in there. In the Kokwani area, based on what Minister Edgel said last evening, and based on the information that we have, is that despite no rain, no significant rain yesterday, the water levels were still rising. It means that there are contributing factors outside. So I'm saying all of this to make the point that The situation here is not one that is as a result of the government not acting. The government can't really do much in terms of respond or well, preventing in the first instance the flooding. And what I understood, and you guys would have listened to Minister Mustafa when he was here the last time, he spoke about the emergency investments that were necessary when the PPP took office, when he went to the cabinet on two occasions to ask for monies to ensure that irrigation works are done, particularly in some of the farming communities where there were complete neglect of drainage structures for many, many years. And, you know, if one is to look at, and I'll talk about the Ithaca situation a little later, I saw the video there of the farmers in Ithaca talking about what they were facing and what they had to face. Um, but many of the drainage canals across the country were neglected, and that is what created part of the problem for us in terms of being able to manage high intensity rainfall and get the water off the land. And I mentioned, I wanted to touch on this before I continue with the issue of the flooding, is that the Minister of Agriculture was in Ithaca, West Berbice yesterday, and he met with farmers there, he met with residents there, and resoundingly, the collective view of many of the farmers there was that they were practically denied the opportunity to continue farming since under the PNC. And they now want, and it was further compounded for the last 5 years when APNO was in power, a coalition that was dominated by the PNC. The fact of the matter is, the farmers want to return to the fields. They talk about how their lands were taken away. They talked about how their irrigation and drainage were cut off from them. And we saw that happening not only in Ithaca, we saw that happening in the MMA ADA under the APNU AFC, where farmers, many farmers, including farmers who supported them, where their lands were taken away and given to friends and cronies of the APNU AFC. So when you look at the total picture and you hear what is happening, you get the distinct conclusion that it's a matter of neglect, it's a matter of not focusing on the priority of the people that led to a situation that we're in now. And we saw it the other night. We saw it clearly the other night when His Excellency went out into the fields and he saw in Georgetown pump attendants were sleeping and pumps were left not running, cokers were closed, and so forth. So it is part and parcel of that neglect, and it's continuing in some instances where for example, Georgetown, where the AP and UAFC, the PNC has control over the city. A lot of people are not blaming and not recognizing the fact that the PNC controls the city, and that is part of the problem, where they are not paying attention for political purposes. Maybe they did what they would have done. The point I am making, though, is what we have to do at this point in time is to do exactly what the government is doing. That is to respond, to ensure that we get help to people, that we get cleaning agents to people, that those who need to be moved to shelters, that they are moved to shelters, to ensure that we can work as much as possible to get the water off the land. That is the most that we can do at this point in time, because of the fact that the situation is a very, very complex one. But interestingly, I am seeing, suddenly Harmon is out in the fields. Harmon is out in the fields, and I want to tell you, Minister Mustafa was in Ithaca, a community that PNC somehow thinks they have a transport for, and the farmers condemned the AP and UAFC and the PNC for what was done to them, and they were very, very, very happy that they received a visit from the Minister of Agriculture and the fact that he's willing to work with them to return the community to farming, but also to ensure that help is brought to them in terms of the flooding situation that they're facing too. All of a sudden, Harmon jumped out today, but guess what Harmon did? Harmon went about the place not because he genuinely was there to give help to people. Harmon was there for the optics. Harmon was there to take a few pictures and come back and post and say, hey, I went and I visit people who were affected by the floods. That is what Harmon was there for. He offered absolutely nothing he offered to them. Absolutely nothing. He didn't say, okay, we're going to organize some hampers and bring it for you, or we're going to help you do this, or we're going to work with the government to ensure that your issues are addressed. Well, the flooding is alleviated, or to get you to shelters or anything of that sort. Harmon just walked through to take a few pictures. He had his gang with him, and they flash a few pictures, and then it's up on Facebook. And what are they doing? They're using the opportunity to go to communities to capture your suffering. This is a natural disaster, if you want. I shouldn't say a natural disaster. I don't think it has reached that level across the country, but it's a natural phenomenon that created this problem. But what Harmon and his gang, what they're doing is to ask you. I'm seeing that they have, you know, they have a number of a WhatsApp number of for you to send video of your flooding. And when you go to Shara Duncan's page and the others, you'll see they're using your suffering, they're using your plight for narrow political purposes. They're not trying to address your concerns, and nothing about what they do in any way is lending to alleviating your issue that you're facing as a result of flooding. It's rather for them to use that to say this part of the country is flooded. Oh, the government is not doing anything. People are crying out. The fact of the matter is, it is clear as day for everyone to see that the government has been on top of this issue, but the reality remains that we're battling the force of nature. That is in the first instance. And secondly, because of the high levels, we're facing high tides. The high levels of water in the drainage canals, in the rivers, etc., complicates the situation in terms of us getting the water off of the land. And we are doing all we can as a government to ensure that this issue is addressed. His Excellency himself is leading from the front. He's leading from the front, and he's encouraging, he's working with the various ministries, government agencies, and even the regional democratic councils, the NDCs, to ensure that in all of this, it boils down to protecting the lives of people and protecting as much as possible people's livelihoods. We see what is happening in many communities. The Blackbush Polder area, in the Maikoni area, in many areas where people's livelihoods are on the threat. And there has been commitments, not only from His Excellency, and not only from the ministers, but as a government, we have made commitments to people that we will help them to get back on their feet once. But at this point in time, our priority is to protect lives and to, as much as possible, protect livelihoods, but at the same time, work to get the water off of the land. So efforts are being made, and I keep encouraging people to make contact with the Civil Defense Commission, make contact with the Ministry of Agriculture, make contact with the Ministry of Public Works and the Ministry of Health, and all the agencies involved to let us know what the situation is like in your area and how we can help to either provide you with hampers, to provide you with shelter, or what could be done to get the water off of the land. That is the priority of the government. So you're going to see more of the Harmons and his gang in your community. You're going to see more of them, but the reality is they are bringing nothing to you. They have absolutely nothing to offer. In 5 years while they were in office, you weren't seeing them in your communities. They weren't coming to you. You weren't seeing them at all. You had real difficulties meeting them. After the no confidence motion, you start seeing them. You start crawling out. But they came with nothing to offer. Even when Harmon became leader of the opposition, he wasn't coming out to meet with you. He wasn't coming out. He's now trying to exploit your suffering. He's now trying to exploit the situation that you face. And this is a trait of the Harmons of this world, especially the PNC. Because when you had the situation in West Berbice, where the two young men initially were killed and subsequently the third young man was killed. Harmon didn't go there. He saw people suffering, he saw emotions running high, and Harmon moved in there to play on people's emotions, to play on people's emotions to spread his racist rhetoric. He's now seeing people are facing difficulties as a result of a natural phenomenon where there's flooding. He's now coming to play on the sentiments to make politics. He's not bringing anything to offer you. So you'll see more of him. I think Ithaca got to him when he saw Minister Mustafa there, and Minister Mustafa going through the many communities that the PNC think that they have a transport for. And that's the difference. The difference is the PPP, as a government, we have never seen Guyana as apart for any political party. We see Guyana and we see Guyanese as they are. And benefits are brought to every community. So Minister Mustafa and the ministers of the government are not going to communities. His Excellency is not visiting communities because he wants to play politics out of it. They're visiting communities because there's a genuine interest to see the development of people and their communities. So again, you're going to see more of the Harmons coming to you with his usual political rhetoric. And I maintain that you reach out to the government, and of course, I wanna urge you, those of you who are living in communities where there's flooding, to keep the kids out of the water, and you yourselves try as much as possible to stay out of the water. We cannot compound our COVID-19 situation with waterborne diseases and so forth. The Ministry of Health stands ready to respond in cases where there are issues, and you're going to see more information coming out. I want to encourage you to look at your television, follow social media. More advisory, more information will be coming out to advise you on how to deal with situations in your community where water is stagnant or where there is flooding. So I want to encourage you to stay out of the water, to take all the necessary precautions, including boiling your drinking water, especially those of you who are depending on maybe the rainwater and so forth, and those of you who may want to use the tap water for cooking, etc., to boil the water, treat the water as much as possible to ensure that it's purified and there are no bacteria in the water. So again, we are going to continue to keep you updated. We're going to continue to bring information to you with regards to how the government is responding to the flooding, and to work as assiduously and to work as much as possible to ensure your situation is improved. One, to get the water off of the land, and to ensure that your needs are taken care of in these difficult times. Um, I also want this evening to continue the discussion on the Paul Slow issue, and I'm seeing a lot of politics being made out of this issue. I think the government has responded, His Excellency would have responded, and we made the point. We made the point, and for the benefit of those of you who are joining us maybe this evening and didn't last evening, we made the point repeatedly that Paul Slow is a pathetic liar. Because if a man has this information, knowing Paul Slow, who campaigned for the APNU AFC in 2015, who was the head of security for the APNU AFC during the 2020 elections campaign, would have information that can implicate the government somehow, and more so His Excellency, as he claimed, and will sit on it and wait until he is charged for criminal conduct. One, sexual assault, and the second being drawing down state funds under false pretense, $10 million. So the issue is he's trying to make politics, and the bandwagonists are behind him. All the bandwagonists of the PNC are behind him. They're running behind him because this is a juicy, as you want to call it, issue that they can think they can make politics out of it somehow. So you find them, everybody making statements now. And I said last night, and I maintain the position that Harmon apparently had his statement prepared. So from the time Paul Slow was finished, Harmon was able to come out and to release a statement. It was attempt at disparaging His Excellency and the Vice President as well as the Attorney General. So, this is just uh, a smoke screen being created by Paul Slow and his gang. That is all they're doing. They're just trying to create a smoke screen so that they can wiggle their way out of this situation. The other issue I want to, because like I said, I'm going to for half an hour this evening. Um, the other issue I wanted to spend some time on is that of the motion to remove those riggers, those who participated in the exercise to rig the elections of 2020. The motion is before the commission, and I see already the commission is acting in accordance or acting accordingly. I saw the chair of the commission would have written to the parties involved, the three persons who are before the courts, by the way, for electoral fraud, written to them, as is the procedure, to ask them to say why they should not be dismissed. It will be interesting to see what the response will be. I would love to see those responses from people like Lowenfield and Mingo and Myers as to why they should not be dismissed. Because the evidence is clearly before us. We saw what happened. We saw what happened on the 5th of March 2020. We saw what happened on the 13th of March 2020 when Mingo on both occasions attempted to rig the elections nakedly, blatantly in front of the cameras for the world to see. When he was calling numbers that only he had, that none of the statements of poll, when they were added, produced. So the world saw that the video evidence is documented. You can run a simple Google search or a search on Facebook, and you will find the video evidence of Mingo attempting to rig the elections on the 5th of March, and then again on the 13th of March at the first of the Ashman's building on the 5th, and then at the GCOM headquarters on the 13th. Then Myers was the one putting people out of the building that evening, having the police there to chase people out and to lock up the building and to attempt to steal. When Mingo faked apparently his that he was sick, it was Myers who was taking over. When they couldn't find Lowenfield many times, it was Myers who. So it was a coordinated attack, a coordinated attempt rather to rig the elections. When it comes to Lowenfield, we saw what Lowenfield did, trying to take the fake, fictitious numbers that Mingo produced and to try to use those to prepare a final declaration. And even before allowing the process to work, when you have a declaration, when you have all 10 declarations from the regional or from the district, from the returning officer for the various districts, that results, when it's declared for the 10 regions, it must go to the commission first. Also, there has to be time. Time must be given to the political parties who may want to file claims for recounts. So you get the declaration. What Lowenfield did in the first instance, when he got the declaration, he prepared a final declaration and rushed to the commission to get to get the commission to declare that. When he was instructed by the commission to follow the process, he deviated from the process. When he was instructed to use the numbers of the recount, he deviated from the process and he used the fictitious numbers of Mingo. So I'm waiting to see how Mingo and Lowenfield and Myers and many others in the Secretariat will defend themselves. How will they defend? How they will justify? Will they justify that they should not be fired? And this is separate and apart from the criminal charges against them, which I don't see them winning in any case. I don't see them being able to defend their conduct. I don't see them being able to do that before the courts. So they have to face the music when they get before the courts, but also we need to have these people out of the secretariat. We need to have them out of GCOM. We need to clean that place. It has to be cleansed. We cannot, the people of this country cannot sit and will not sit and allow another election to go by with that gang of hustlers and those criminal elements, as I would want to call them, in the GCOM secretariat. And we have to understand the difference here. If you have had a chance to look at the the motion to have them dismissed, you will see it is itemized. It is itemized their transgressions. It is also outlined in that motion clearly that the secretariat is a creature of the commission, simply meaning that the secretariat is instructed, it carries out the instructions of the commission. But these guys were doing their own thing. The people of this country and the world over will not allow what happened between March 2nd and August 1st, from March 3rd rather, to August 1st to happen anymore in this country. The fact of the matter is, it is clear as day that these were the players in the process, and we know the political players who were involved as well, because you have Walter Lawrence and you have the others are before the courts too, who were involved in the attempts to rig the elections. So I think the response of the three is highly anticipated, and I hope that the Guyanese people will get a chance to see, their response. How do they intend to defend why they should not be fired? And it's clear, it's clear. It comes down now for the commission, after giving them the opportunity to have some amount of deliberations on the motion and for it to go to a vote. And that will definitely that will be the opportunity to get rid of the riggers, and that's going to be the first step. I know a lot of Guyanese people, a lot of persons are happy at the fact that action is being taken. We have been seeing the sentiments, but dealing with GCOM and as a commission, it's a constitutional body, it's an independent body. The government has absolutely no control, no role in really directing the operations at GCOM. The government has representatives at GCOM who are acting accordingly. They're the ones who took the motion to have these elements who were involved in the attempts to rig the elections removed. Um, the courts, it's not an independent arm of the government. The judiciary is an independent arm of the government. There's evidence, in my view, enough evidence to convict those who participated in the attempts to rig the elections, and justice must and will prevail, and those who are found guilty will and must be held accountable for their actions. In the 21st century, we cannot allow people to want to believe somehow that they can attempt to steal the will of the people, and it's okay that they're going to get a slap on the wrist and they're going to move on. The reality is, you've done the crime and you will have to face the time. The people of Guyana, the world over, will not allow another dictator, as Granger was attempting to be, to fester anywhere. And the reality is, and we're happy that on the 2nd of August, justice, democracy, and good will prevail, and the People's Progressive Party Civic, which won the elections, is able to take office. However, we have to deal with the issue that existed, the issue of what happened at GCOM. We have to get rid of the elements that we can't trust, and I think that process has been initiated, and those who are found guilty, like I said, will face the consequences. That is That is the reality of the situation. I want to quickly wrap things up, and I want to spend a little bit of time to talk quickly to you about um, our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, I want to encourage people not to lose sight of the pandemic and of the COVID-19. It still exists, it still affects the world. We encourage people to get tested. We encourage people to ensure um, that they take the vaccines, that they continue to do what is necessary. That is to wear their masks, to social distance, and if you don't need to be out, please don't be out in the public. Vaccines are available. Try as much as possible to get vaccinated. Uh, and I saw an interesting letter in the newspapers yesterday, which spoke to the only route out of this pandemic is really vaccination. It came from a medical personnel, a sound medical personnel, who didn't really, wasn't really speaking about Guyana per se, but was really giving a global perspective of how we should deal with the pandemic. The world over should deal with the pandemic, and that is to get vaccinated. We have 150,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine coming. That's a single dose vaccine, and I see a lot of it will be utilized mainly in the hinterland, the interior locations. Justifiably so, because it's easier for you to be able to, well, it's difficult for you to really manage the double doses, the two-dose vaccine in the hinterland region. It has been managed, but it's the being able to use the single dose in the hinterland will be much more effective. With regards to the other vaccines, there's still a lot of first doses available. The issue has been we had a delay with the second dose of the Sputnik. We expect that to be here in very, very near future, so that persons who would have taken the first dose are able to take the second dose pretty soon. So again, please do not lose sight of the COVID-19, and let us continue to do what is right. I encourage you again to take the vaccine. I want to wrap things up here, and I want to quickly say to you that you know, again, if you're facing floods, you're seeing flooding in your area, to get on to the Civil Defense Commission, get on to the Ministry of Agriculture, um, and to get on to the necessary agencies to ensure that we can quickly respond to your situation, so that at the end of the day, the whole issue of flooding is properly managed, but more so that we're able to respond accordingly and to deal with this. So until next time, I want to say thanks for joining us. To our viewers, I want to say thanks for being part of the program. We're going to be back with you tomorrow evening with more information on the flooding situation and, of course, all the other issues that exist in the world of politics. Until then, we encourage you to stay safe. Have a good rest of the day.